And joined as promised by Kate Fagan, ESPN, Around the Horn, First Take, ESPN Radio's The Trifecta, and so much more. She's everywhere these days. She's also the all-time leading scorer, most importantly, at Niskayuna, and she joins us here on Big Board Sports. Good morning, Kate. How are you?
Good morning. Thanks for having me. You guys might be the only pair who would say that is most important on that list.
Come on now. You remember those days, don't you? A member of the News Channel 13 All-Star team back in those days with Bob McNamara?
Of course. I'm still bitter, I guess, that I wasn't like the number one overall pick on that. I think it was Becky Godstein. Maybe. I don't know if you remember that name, Roger.
Oh, I do. I do.
No, I loved it. I remember having the recording of the News Channel 13 All-Star news program the night that I was on, and, my parents would show it to me 10 years later. So, yes, of course.
Yeah, it's awesome. What year did you graduate high school, Kate?
I left Niskayuna in 1999.
Okay, yeah. So I came in +86, and Mac was here when I got here, and we had we're still. Hey, listen, the tradition here lives on. We still have, I don't know how many, 30 plus years of doing this News Channel 13 boys and girls basketball team. So it doesn't end, and people still get upset over like what selection they are. I think I should have been 6 or 2 or 4, or why wasn't I 1? That hasn't changed all these years later.
Yeah, and I guess now I want to know, please reveal some of the process for me. They are ranked, right? They are in order. Do you guys have some sort of, huge board meeting, and you get down to the nitty-gritty and ranking every single player?
There's a lot of pizza and Subway, Kate.
Yeah, pizza, Subway, and breakfast at an undisclosed location where the All-Star Scouts huddle on a Sunday morning. Then I just turn in the bill to Steve Babulis, our general manager. He goes, another breakfast for the All-Star Scouts. Yep, we got to make sure we get it right. AK, couple of things. Let's start with Westbrook last night, winning the NBA MVP, and I don't think there's any shocking news there, right?
No, obviously he was the front runner. The last time when guys were still playing and we were talking about it, I was in the James Harden camp. That obviously proved erroneous considering how he flamed out of the NBA playoffs. But as we were going into discussion at the end of the regular season, I was a big James Harden guy just because I thought, looking at the argument of him bringing those Houston Rockets up more playoff spots than Westbrook did. But, you can't argue with the historic nature of Westbrook's season and how he made a team that wouldn't have been fun to watch, perhaps one of the most fun to watch in the NBA. So it was definitely his award, and it was a good award show from the NBA.
Kate, I'm with you. Yeah. This is Chris up here with Rodger as well. I was on James Harden, too, because I believe that the triple-double, I don't know how many years from now, 3, 4, maybe 5 years, I believe it's going to become something of an overrated stat because the game is just so different now. You can't compare Russ's triple-double to Oscar Robertson's. There's so many more shots, so many more points, and just, more opportunities to post a triple-double. Not to take anything away from what Russ did, but I really believe in 3, 4, 5 years, that category, that stat, will not be held at such a high regard as it is now. And I value the wins of a team, and James Harden just elevated that team in Houston like I did not expect he might.
Yeah, Chris, you're spot on because I know in maybe a third of the way through the season, it might have been even a little earlier when Russ was on pace, we did a topic on Around the Horn about Westbrook and whether we thought he could average a triple-double the whole season. And I was in the camp that I didn't think it would be possible because I was using the old-school framework of a guard wouldn't be allowed to get some of the rebounds that forwards and centers would get because it was just part of the infrastructure of a team would be forwards and centers grabbed whatever sort of general rebounds existed. And once you started watching the Oklahoma City Thunder, this gets to your point about a triple-double and what it means and what it used to mean, you could see that Russ was the designated rebounder on the team almost for the point of getting a triple-double. And so, to me, obviously averaging a triple-double is an astonishing achievement, and being the first in perhaps shifting how the NBA plays and what that stat might look like is imperative and important. I just thought, okay, it's not the same level of triple-double that it used to be when he's the designated rebounder on the team.
Kate, is John McEnroe's, we're talking with Kate Fagan, ESPN, and hailing from Niskayuna. And by the way, your father was a pretty good basketball player too. I'm sure.
My dad. I mean, nobody's a better shooter than my dad. I mean, in the whole entire Capital District, he might still be the best shooter. I mean, he's lights out. So thank you for saying that.
Well, I'm impressed that he's still playing because I think your dad and I are close to the same age. We used to battle back in the late '80s here on the court, and we reminisce about those days. But he's still playing, and I'm not. So I give him all the credit in the world. I want to ask you about John McEnroe's comparison of Serena Williams. Is it fair? McEnroe said Williams would be like 700 in the world if she played on the men's circuit. Is that fair?
I think what's unfair is even bringing up the comparison at a point in time when it's unnecessary. I think to me, it's basically the easiest way to step in to an inflammatory conversation is to make sure that you're comparing the best female athlete and how she might compare to men's players. It's not a place you really need to go to validate what Serena has done. I mean, it opens up a huge conversation just because we've separated like boys and girls playing from the age of 7. We start saying, all right, boys are playing over there, girls are playing over there. And so we've never really seen what a female athlete might look like if they're playing with the boys all the way up through. I'm not suggesting there's not biological differences, but there's a lot of like issues at play in culturally in how we treat boys sports and girls sports. So at that point, it just becomes a conversation where it's a lose-lose for John McEnroe. And I know he was on NPR promoting a book, so of course you're going to be asked about Serena Williams, just like when I knew I was coming on this program. I was like, if I don't get asked about Serena Williams, I'm going to be shocked.
Yeah, absolutely. And Serena's response on Twitter, "Dear John, I adore and respect you, but please keep me out of your statements that are not factually based." So I get that.
I think that's a fancy way of saying keep my name out of your mouth, I think is what Serena was saying there.
The big story in New York this baseball season, and now it's not only in New York, but this guy is everywhere, and that is the presence of Aaron Judge, and we all rise at Yankee Stadium, and the guy's hitting home runs at an alarming rate. What is your take on Aaron Judge, and you think he is the real deal? Kate, I always go, listen, can we please, last year, everyone was jumping all over Gary Sanchez and how great he was, and his body of work in the second half of the season was really good and all the home runs he hit. This year, pretty good, but not quite like he was last year. What's your take on Aaron Judge, and you think this young kid is legit?
Well, even though I'm a New York Mets fan, I will answer this question. I do think he's past the curve in terms of like sample size. I think the easiest, and I'd probably get muted on Around the Horn for even like evoking the phrase sample size. But at this point, he has past the certain number that I would say is you're actually giving me verifiable results on how you produce. And we just had a conversation about Bellinger and his home run pace and whether we thought that was sustainable. And I'm still on the camp of like, no, absolutely not at this point. Not necessarily sustainable from a pace point of view, but from an effectiveness point of view. So yeah, I'm at the point where I'm like, he's legit. We even have conversations about who you'd rather watch, like Steph Curry warm up, or be over there at Yankee Stadium watching batting practice. And when that's a toss-up, you got something special.
The other question I had for you, Kate, regarding another hot topic is Carmelo Anthony. And do you think that Melo is going to be on the New York Knicks opening day roster?
I do think he is. That doesn't mean I think he's going to be a New York Knick for the full season. We talk about Carmelo all the time, even like on our Saturday show on the Trifecta. And what we talk about usually is how reflective his decision to stay on the Knicks is really of where winning is on his his ladder of what's important to him. To me, this is hard to say, but it says more about Carmelo as he's on the opening day roster than it does necessarily about the New York Knicks. I do think he will be a Knick on opening day, but I do think he will likely be gone by the trading deadline of this season.
Hey, Kate, one more for me. You're just doing phenomenal work with ESPN. How did your career go for our local fans who followed you at Niskay and then at Colorado? How did the career get so involved with the broadcasting and now you're doing so many things at ESPN?
Well, I started after Colorado. After I was done playing hoops, I wanted to be a writer, and instead of writing the next great American novel, I was like, you know what, I'm going to go into journalism. So I worked at a lot of smaller papers, and I was up at the Glens Falls Post-Star for a little while, and then I caught a lucky break in becoming the Philadelphia Inquirer's beat writer for the Philadelphia 76ers, which gave me a little bit more exposure and able to write about a topic that, you know, a lot of NBA fans cared about. So from there, a lot of opportunities opened up, and at ESPN, and I started there about 5 years ago and started doing TV a couple years ago because they wanted to expand, the portfolio of who they put on TV. So that's the quick hit synopsis of how I got from Niskayuna to Bristol.
Yeah, it's awesome. And is there one thing that you enjoy the most in everything that you do at ESPN?
Actually, my favorite thing is Outside the Lines. I started backing up Bob Lee last year along with another guy named Ryan Smith, and it's like a good mix of being able to dive into some of the more meaningful, important topics than just some of the sports banter of the day, which is also really fun to do, but occasionally you kind of want to dip your foot in the water of, like, talking about some of those more deep dive topics, and Outside the Lines gives me a chance to do that.
Okay, keep up the great work. We appreciate a few minutes here on Big Board Sports, and I'm glad we got into the Niskayuna days and just how great a player you were back in the day.
Thanks, Roger. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate the time.